You might be watching this after work, stopped at a red light, sitting high inside a large, expensive truck. The leather seats feel new, the dashboard glows softly, and you feel powerful, protected, and slightly above everyone else nearby. In moments like this, it's easy to believe you're in control, that you finally made it in life. Before we go further, gently tap. Like if money stress has ever followed you into moments that should feel calm. Leave a comment sharing what you drive daily, not to judge, but so others realize they're not alone. If someone you care about feels quietly trapped by financial pressure, sharing this video can be a small act of kindness. And if honest conversations about money help you breathe easier, consider subscribing for grounded discussions like this weekly. My name is Max, and a few years ago, I believed owning the right vehicle meant I was finally successful. I worked a comfortable office job, wore business casual clothes, and convinced myself a big truck made sense. I didn't haul equipment, tow trailers, or work construction, but the truck made me feel capable anyway. At first, everything felt great, especially when friends admired it or strangers nodded approvingly in parking lots. What I didn't realize then was that feeling powerful and actually being free are very different things. Slowly, without any dramatic moment, that truck began influencing decisions I thought I was choosing freely. The monthly payment arrived like clockwork, large enough to demand attention, small enough to ignore temporarily. Then came fuel costs, insurance bills, maintenance, and registration, stacking quietly month after month. None of these expenses felt dangerous alone, but together they began tightening around my budget. I still told myself I owned the truck, because technically my name was on the paperwork. But ownership isn't about paperwork. It's about who actually controls your choices and future options. That's when I started asking an uncomfortable question I had avoided for a long time. Did I really own that truck, or was it slowly starting to own me instead? Owning something should give you flexibility, not anxiety, every time your bank app refreshes unexpectedly late at night. Back then, I dismissed that anxiety as normal adulthood, responsibility, or just the price of being successful today. But anxiety isn't success, and responsibility shouldn't feel like permanent pressure squeezing every future decision you make daily. Let's slow down and clearly explain how a truck slowly turns from tool into financial authority over your life. It starts with the monthly payment, because that number quietly dictates what feels possible for you each month. A payment feels manageable when isolated, especially compared to income you expect to always continue without interruption forever. But life doesn't respect projections, and income rarely arrives as smoothly as spreadsheets promise during real emergencies ever. When income wobbles even slightly, that truck payment doesn't wobble back with empathy. It demands precision monthly without mercy. Then come operating costs people mentally separate, pretending fuel, insurance, and maintenance somehow don't count as real obligations. Yet those costs are unavoidable, recurring, and directly tied to owning something far larger than needed for daily commuting. Over time, these expenses quietly reshape your budget, shrinking flexibility without announcing themselves loudly or asking permission first. You stop saving aggressively, not intentionally, but because there's always another bill arriving soon, demanding attention quietly monthly. Emergency funds become theoretical goals, postponed until someday when things finally feel stable, after promotions arrive or raises. Meanwhile, the truck remains constant, demanding its share regardless of your stress or circumstances changing around you rapidly. This is how ownership flips, not suddenly but gradually through repetition and obligation that never negotiates down easily. Soon, you're planning life around the truck instead of fitting the truck into life with intention and clarity. Career choices start feeling narrower because steady income becomes non-negotiable, not optional anymore for you financially speaking. You hesitate to change jobs, negotiate harder, or risk uncertainty that could disrupt payments supporting your vehicle habit. The truck quietly converts confidence into caution, turning ambition into fear of instability over months and years slowly. And that's when you realize something uncomfortable. Freedom isn't about horsepower, it's about margin and available choices daily. At this point, many people push back mentally, saying they can afford it because payments clear monthly. That belief focuses only on survival, not on whether the choice actually improves your life long term. Affording something simply means avoiding disaster, not creating comfort, security, or meaningful progress over time. To understand control, we need to look beyond payments and examine what that truck quietly steals instead. It steals margin, the financial breathing room that lets you handle surprises without panic or desperation. Margin is what allows a flat tire, medical bill, or job transition to feel inconvenient, not catastrophic. When your vehicle consumes too much income, margin disappears long before income actually feels low. This is why people earning decent salaries still feel constantly behind, stressed, and unsure despite working hard. I saw this clearly watching a close friend make the same truck decision shortly after I did. He worked in software, never hauled equipment, yet convinced himself the truck was a practical reward. Within a year, his savings stalled, credit card balances crept upward, and vacations quietly disappeared. Nothing dramatic happened, just a slow tightening where every extra dollar already had an assignment. That truck wasn't ruining his life loudly, it was quietly redirecting it without his conscious permission. When expenses rise gradually, your brain adapts and normalizes pressure instead of recognizing danger. This psychological adaptation keeps people trapped longer than bad math alone ever could. You stop asking if the truck serves you and start asking how to serve the payment reliably. Your budget becomes defensive, focused on protection rather than growth, opportunity, or experimentation. Even small joys begin requiring justification because money feels spoken for before you even earn it. Over time, financial pressure becomes background noise, always present, quietly shaping mood and confidence. This is how a vehicle becomes authority, not through force, but through constant, unquestioned obligation. To see the full cost, we must stop thinking monthly and start thinking across years and missed possibilities. Vehicles depreciate quickly, but commitments depreciate nothing. They linger and compound pressure year after year, financial stress relentlessly. Consider fuel alone, where trucks average far fewer miles per gallon than modest sedans driven daily by most commuters. Insurance follows replacement cost, meaning expensive trucks carry higher premiums even for careful, experienced drivers with clean records. Maintenance scales up as vehicles grow larger, turning oil changes, brakes, and tires into recurring budget shocks unexpectedly. These costs rarely appear in advertisements because selling freedom works better than explaining responsibility and long-term trade-offs clearly. Over 7 years, small monthly differences snowball into tens of thousands quietly removed from future choices and opportunities lost. That money could have reduced debt, built investments, or bought time during uncertain career transitions later on comfortably. Instead, it gets burned maintaining an image that fades long before the loan finally ends completely anyway, emotionally. This is where trucks stop being transportation and start becoming constraints shaping behavior subtly over time, daily decisions. When obligations are heavy, people prioritize certainty over growth, even when growth would improve life significantly long-term outcomes. I remember declining opportunities because instability felt dangerous, not because they lacked potential or meaning financially at all. The truck payment sat quietly in my mind, influencing decisions without ever speaking aloud to me directly daily. That constant obligation trains you to avoid risk, even healthy risks that build skills and confidence over time. Freedom requires margin, and margin disappears when too much income feeds depreciating machines every single month, relentlessly ongoing. Some argue trucks hold value better, but percentages hide absolute dollars actually lost over time overall ownership periods. Losing 40% of 90,000 hurts far more than losing half of $30,000 total today. Depreciation myths survive because they sound smart, even while draining wallets quietly across years of ownership cycles nationwide. Another overlooked cost is stress, the constant mental math running beneath otherwise normal days at work, home, everywhere. Stress reduces sleep quality, patience, and confidence, creating a feedback loop that money worsens over long periods slowly. Stress makes people defensive, reactive, and short-sighted, especially when money obligations feel unavoidable in permanent daily lives. Instead of asking what you want long-term, you ask what keeps everything from collapsing this month financially. That shift is subtle, but it changes how you think about work, relationships, and future planning decisions long-term. Big fixed payments reduce flexibility, which quietly limits creativity, courage, and willingness to experiment with life choices freely. You start choosing safe options not because they are best, but because failure feels too expensive emotionally, financially. This is how debt disguised as lifestyle slowly rewires behavior without ever announcing itself clearly to you daily. When your vehicle dominates your budget, it also dominates conversations you have with yourself internally every single day. You rationalize sacrifices, telling yourself this is adulthood, while quietly postponing dreams you once valued, deeply personal goals. Meanwhile, the promised pride fades quickly, replaced by routine, payments, and constant background financial concern over time quietly. That emotional trade rarely feels worth it once novelty disappears and obligations remain unchanged, month after month ongoing. This is where many people double down, defending the choice instead of re examining the underlying math, honestly, objectively. Admitting a mistake feels painful, especially when identity and pride are tied to the purchase emotionally, socially, publicly. So people justify harder, comparing themselves upward, saying others spend more or live worse anyway, somehow, elsewhere too. But comparison doesn't fix cash flow, and pride doesn't pay bills or create breathing room financially, ever, consistently. The numbers stay the same, regardless of how confidently you explain the decision to others repeatedly, publicly, defensively. Eventually, reality forces a reckoning, usually during a job change, health issue, or unexpected expense hitting. Suddenly, hard. That's when people realize obligations don't care about confidence, optimism, or good intentions whatsoever, at all, financially speaking. The truck payment still arrives, demanding priority even as everything else becomes uncertain around you. Suddenly, unexpectedly, fast. This moment often brings shame, not because of money, but because the illusion breaks apart. Publicly, painfully, inside. And that's the turning point, where awareness replaces denial and real choices finally reappear again, slowly, clearly, deliberately. Awareness creates discomfort because it forces you to see decisions clearly instead of hiding behind habits and narratives. Once you see the pattern, you notice how often financial stress traces back to one oversized fixed commitment. For many people, that commitment isn't housing or education, but a vehicle far exceeding daily functional needs. Modern trucks are marketed as necessities, yet most owners use only a fraction of their actual capabilities. Paying for unused capacity feels harmless monthly, but becomes extremely expensive when multiplied across years. According to recent transportation data, average vehicle ownership costs now exceed expectations for many households nationwide. Fuel, insurance, depreciation, and maintenance quietly consume income before families feel meaningfully comfortable financially. When transportation costs rise faster than wages, pressure increases even for disciplined earners with stable careers. This gap explains why higher incomes don't automatically translate into peace, security, or long-term financial confidence. Big vehicles amplify this effect because every supporting cost scales upward alongside size, weight, and replacement value. The issue isn't irresponsibility, it's misunderstanding how fixed costs limit flexibility more than variable expenses ever could. Fixed costs demand obedience, while variable costs allow adjustment during uncertain or transitional periods of life. When too much income feeds fixed obligations, even small disruptions feel threatening rather than manageable calmly. This dynamic keeps people locked into routines that feel safe but prevent meaningful financial progress over time. I remember calculating how many hours of my life each truck payment actually represented. Seeing that number reframed the purchase from pride into obligation tied directly to my limited time. Time is the only resource you never recover, yet we often trade it casually for status symbols. That realization made the truck feel heavier, not physically, but psychologically and emotionally burdensome. Once you understand this trade-off, the appeal of oversized vehicles begins to lose its emotional grip. Clarity doesn't arrive suddenly, but it grows steadily as numbers replace stories and illusions fade away. At this stage, many people ask what they should do if they already own the truck today now. The goal is not shame or guilt, but stopping further damage and regaining control gradually over time intentionally. Selling an expensive vehicle feels like failure, but continuing guarantees far more damage long-term financially, emotionally, realistically. Many people delay action because they fear admitting mistakes more than they fear future consequences financially, personally, publicly. But sunk cost thinking traps people, convincing them past losses justify future losses, continuing unnecessarily long-term financially, emotionally. The healthiest decision focuses forward, asking what choice improves your next 5 years financially, emotionally, practically, sustainably, realistically. Downsizing transportation often feels dramatic, yet it immediately releases cash flow and mental space, monthly, quickly, consistently again. Cash flow creates options, and options restore confidence faster than almost any motivational advice ever given publicly online. When payments shrink, anxiety shrinks too, because survival no longer dominates every financial thought each single waking day. This breathing room allows you to rebuild emergency savings without constant frustration or self-blame, slowly, steadily again. It also restores choice in careers. letting you explore better opportunities without paralyzing fear of income disruption monthly. This flexibility is what real success feels like, not leather seats or aggressive styling badges, payments, obligations attached. I didn't feel smaller after downsizing. I felt lighter, calmer, and unexpectedly more confident about money decisions overall. The truck had promised confidence but delivered tension, while simplicity quietly delivered peace over time, consistently daily living. This shift isn't about deprivation, it's about aligning spending with actual values and priorities, long-term personal financial goals. Most people want stability, options, and dignity, not the appearance of strength through consumption fueled by marketing narratives. When you stop performing success, you start actually building it slowly, deliberately, sustainably, with intention, patience, margin, clarity. That process feels quieter, but it produces outcomes that last far longer than impressions ever shown publicly online. Freedom grows when fixed costs shrink, giving you room to respond instead of react thoughtfully, calmly, strategically, financially. This is the opposite of weakness. It's discipline applied toward life you actually want long-term, sustainably, intentionally, freely. Imagine two versions of the same person making different vehicle decisions at the exact same moment. In one life, you choose the oversized truck, accepting high payments in exchange for image and identity. In the other life, you choose a modest sedan, keeping payments low and flexibility intentionally high. Both versions wake up early, commute to work, and face similar stressors during ordinary weekdays initially. The difference appears quietly at night when bills arrive and one version feels tight while breathing easier. One calculates payments constantly, while the other thinks about saving, investing, or planning something meaningful ahead. Over months, these small differences compound into confidence for one and caution for the other. One begins saying yes to opportunities while the other hesitates, fearing disruption to fragile financial balance. Neither life looks dramatic on social media, but internally they feel completely different. One feels supported by choices, the other feels monitored by obligations that never sleep. This contrast explains why lifestyle decisions matter more than income increases for long-term peace. Money rarely destroys lives suddenly. It erodes freedom slowly through repetitive, unquestioned commitments. Vehicles become dangerous when they lock people into identities they must keep paying for. The truck doesn't just require money, it requires consistency, obedience, and emotional defense daily. Every justification becomes another brick, reinforcing a structure that limits future movement quietly. Meanwhile, the simpler choice creates margin that absorbs shocks and allows recovery without panic. Margin transforms emergencies into inconveniences, preserving dignity and clarity during stressful moments. This is why financial health feels calmer, not richer, when aligned with real needs. Wealth is less about accumulation speed and more about how resilient your life feels under pressure. Resilience comes from choices that support you when life inevitably becomes unpredictable and imperfect. This pressure didn't appear randomly. It was carefully engineered through decades of marketing and cultural storytelling. Advertisements rarely sell transportation. They sell identity, control, preparedness, and a sense of masculine capability. Trucks are shown conquering terrain, hauling impossible loads, and symbolizing competence most owners never actually need. Those images bypass logic and speak directly to insecurity, convincing viewers that strength can be purchased monthly. When enough people accept that story, it becomes normalized, even expected within social and professional circles. Choosing differently then feels like opting out of belonging, not just declining a vehicle purchase decision. This social pressure keeps people locked in patterns that quietly benefit lenders, manufacturers, and advertisers instead. Meanwhile, individuals shoulder risk alone, carrying obligations long after emotional excitement has faded completely away. The system doesn't collapse when you struggle, it simply replaces you with another willing borrower easily. Understanding this removes shame, because the trap was designed, not stumbled into accidentally by careless individuals. Awareness returns power, allowing you to separate personal worth from consumption and image-driven choices. Once identity detaches from objects, decisions become clearer and less emotionally charged overall. You begin asking whether purchases serve your life or demand service from you instead. This question reframes everything, turning consumption into a deliberate tool rather than automatic response. When you reclaim this perspective, many expenses immediately lose their emotional grip. The truck stops symbolizing strength and starts appearing as a very expensive agreement you signed. Agreements can be renegotiated, exited, or avoided entirely once you see them clearly. Freedom doesn't require perfection, it requires honesty about trade-offs and courage to change direction. Most people don't need more money, they need fewer obligations draining attention and energy daily. This realization sets the stage for a different definition of success, rooted in peace and autonomy. Success is rarely loud. It feels calm, stable, and quietly supportive during ordinary days and unexpected challenges ahead together. It means sleeping well, not checking balances constantly, and knowing one setback won't unravel everything you've built carefully. That peace comes from margin, choices, and alignment between spending and values, not oversized vehicles or approval seeking. If you're watching this and feeling defensive, that reaction often signals something important worth examining honestly today, carefully. Defensiveness protects identity, but curiosity protects your future, especially when numbers quietly contradict stories you tell yourself daily. You don't need to hate trucks, you just need clarity about what you're trading away long-term effects. If the truck truly serves your life weekly, fine. It's a tool earning its cost consistently over time. But if it mainly serves image, ask what that image is costing your freedom financially, emotionally over years. Be honest without shame, because honesty is the first step toward regaining control over your money and life. If you already own the truck and feel trapped, selling isn't quitting, it's choosing relief over prolonged stress. If you're considering buying one, pause, because 7 years is a long time to carry regret financial weight. The quiet alternative is boring transportation paired with exciting options elsewhere in your life that actually compound happiness. Options look like savings, flexibility, rest, and the courage to say yes later when opportunities appear unexpectedly again. They also look like saying no to purchases that demand obedience rather than support from your future self. Success isn't proven in driveways or parking lots. It's felt in calm mornings without financial panic or fear. It's felt when emergencies don't threaten dignity, and choices remain available because you built margin over time intentionally. If this video helped you see differently, consider sharing it with someone quietly struggling right now, financially, emotionally. Not to judge them, but to offer perspective and permission to choose lighter paths without shame or pressure. Freedom grows when we stop confusing consumption with strength and payments with success in modern culture today, everywhere. Buy the boring car, keep your money, build your life, and sleep peacefully again with confidence and freedom.